right, so today we're going back to the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
To an event that a lot of people kind of scratch their heads about, I think.
Yeah.
The fall of Fort Ticonderoga.
Right.
In 1777.
Yep.
Now people hear about a fort falling, and they probably think of like
big battle.
Yeah, like a huge battle, like
Cannons blazing.
Yeah, hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Maybe a siege.
Yeah.
But Ticonderoga is a different story.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah. So Fort Ticonderoga, if you don't know, was up in what's now New York State,
right
near Lake Champlain.
Yep.
Kind of a key spot.
Very strategic.
Yeah, I mean, it was considered by the Americans to be like
the key,
kind of the key to holding
to the north,
that part of the colonies. And it was supposed to be incredibly strong.
Yeah, impregnable was the word that was used.
Impregnable. Yeah.
So our goal today is to kind of figure out how this supposedly, untakeable fort ended up in British hands without this big fight.
And pretty easily, too.
Yeah. It's almost like a strategic chess move.
Yeah, think of it that way.
Rather than like a
slugfest.
A big battle.
Right.
So we're looking at General John Burgoyne.
Yeah. Good old Johnny B.
Johnny B leading the British.
Right.
And he's got like 8,000 men.
Yeah, he's got a pretty sizable force.
A pretty sizable force comprised of...
Well, you got British regulars?
British regulars.
Of course.
German Hessians.
Hired guns, essentially.
Yeah.
Huh.
And indigenous allies as well.
Right. A lot of Native American allies.
And they are up against...
And much smaller...
General Arthur St. Clair.
Yeah.
Leading the Americans.
Right.
And they've only got about 3,000 men.
Yeah, so significantly outnumbered.
Significantly outnumbered.
Yeah.
And yet everyone thinks that Ticonderoga is going to be this huge battle.
And it doesn't turn out that way at all.
Well, to understand how we get there,
we
got to go back a little bit.
All right, let's go back.
Uh-huh.
So rewind a little bit.
Take it back.
To earlier in the war.
All right, so 1775, 1776.
Okay.
Americans had tried to invade Quebec.
Right.
Bold move.
Bold move.
Didn't work out so well.
No.
The Brits pushed them back down to Ticonderoga.
Right, but here's the thing.
They didn't attack right away.
Yeah, why not?
The British,
Yeah.
Well, they realized they needed control of the lake.
Oh, Lake Champlain.
Lake Champlain, yeah.
Makes sense.
To supply an army that big,
Right.
8,000 men,
yeah,
you need a lot of stuff.
You can't march all that in. You
can't just bring it in by boat.
Bringing it on your back.
Yeah.
So they spent a year building a fleet.
Oh, so this is like 1776.
1776.
They're building up this fleet. And this gave the Americans some time.
Crucial time.
To fortify.
To dig in.
Yeah. So this pause really sets the stage for Burgoyne's campaign in 77.
Okay, so Burgoyne shows up in 77. He's got his big plan.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just trying to take a fort.
No.
He's thinking bigger.
Much bigger.
Yeah.
He arrives in Quebec in May of 77. Yeah. And his goal...
What was the goal?
Drive south.
Okay.
Take key points, like Ticonderoga, of course.
Right.
And control the Hudson River Valley.
The Hudson River Valley, that's the key.
That is the key.
Right, so like if you think of the colonies as like a body.
Okay.
The Hudson River Valley is like the main artery.
Yeah.
It's how you get supplies and troops and everything up and down.
And south.
The colonies.
Yep.
So Burgoyne wants to like cut off that artery.
Right.
And essentially split the colonies in two.
Isolate New England.
Isolate New England up there from all the
southern colonies.
Yeah, the rest of them.
Yeah.
And so Ticonderoga
is right in his way.
Is like the big roadblock.
Yeah, the choke point to getting to the Hudson.
Okay, and the Americans obviously understood this, right?
Well, yeah.
They knew how important Ticonderoga was.
Uh-huh.
They didn't just sit there and wait for the British to come knocking.
No, they were busy.
Yeah. What were they doing?
They were fortifying like crazy.
Okay. How do you even fortify Ticonderoga? I mean, it's already a fort.
You can always do more.
I guess so.
So on the other side of the lake,
the
Vermont side, there's this big peninsula.
Okay.
They fortified it like crazy, and they renamed it Mount Independence.
Mount Independence.
Oh, it's patriotic.
Yeah, very patriotic.
And then they built all these other defenses.
Okay, like what?
Redoubts?
Redoubts?
Yeah, they're like small temporary forts, but they built a big fort to the north.
Oh, wow. So like even more fortifications?
Yeah, beyond the original fort. Another fort on this hill called Mount Hope.
Mount Hope, okay.
And to tie it all together, they built a floating bridge.
A floating bridge.
On almost a quarter of a mile long.
Across the lake.
Across the lake.
Connecting Ticonderoga and Mount Independence.
Yeah, so they could move troops back and forth.
Yeah, makes sense.
Quickly and easily communicate.
So it sounds like they were trying to make this place like super tough to take.
Fortress.
Yeah, a real fortress.
Right.
But then it falls without much of a fight.
So what went wrong?
Yeah, what went wrong?
Well, I think one thing we got to look at is command.
Command, okay.
There were a lot of changes in leadership
What?
in the Continental Army's Northern Department.
Okay.
So the guy in charge of the whole area was General Philip Schuyler.
Okay, Schuyler. But Horatio Gates.
Gates, okay.
He was in charge of the defenses at Ticonderoga.
Right.
Then Congress decides, hey, let's put Gates in charge of the whole Northern Department.
Oh, wow.
Schuyler's not happy about this.
No, I imagine not. So then Congress changes their mind again.
Oh, boy.
Puts Schuyler back in charge. Gates is like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, he's insulted.
He leaves.
All right, so then
just 3 weeks before Burgoyne shows up.
Oh, wow.
General Arthur St. Clair?
Clair.
He's given command of Ticonderoga.
Oh, so he's like the new guy?
Brand new.
Wow, talk about trial by fire.
Right into the frying pan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that they were also really short on men.
Oh, yeah.
Like the American forces.
Way understring.
Yeah.
They had a war council just a couple weeks before the British arrived.
Oh, wow.
And they concluded
What did they say?
They only had 2,500 men.
2,500?
Soldiers.
Okay.
That's not nearly enough to defend all those fortifications.
Forts and every...
The bridge, the redoubts, everything.
So they're already outnumbered. They've got a new commander who's probably not super familiar with the area.
Probably not to speed.
And then Burgoyne shows up with 8,000 men.
Yeah.
So how did Burgoyne approach this? I mean, did he just like sail down the lake with all his ships?
He was actually pretty smart about it.
Okay.
He's deliberate.
Okay.
Moved south along Lake Champlain with his fleet.
Yeah.
Big, impressive fleet.
Yeah.
But he had a really effective advance guard.
Oh, so like scouts?
Yeah, especially the indigenous scouts.
Okay.
They did a great job of screening his movements.
So the Americans didn't know.
They had no idea
how many there were.
Or how many there were.
Where they were going.
Wow.
It's like trying to see through a really thick curtain.
Yeah.
You just don't know what's on the other side.
Just so they're already in trouble, information-wise.
Right.
And then Burgoyne, who I guess kind of liked to, you know.
Yeah, he liked to be a little dramatic.
Mm-hmm. He issues this proclamation to the Americans.
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
Right.
What did he say? Well, he basically said,
like, I'm coming for you.
You should surrender.
Yeah.
I've got a huge army.
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile.
Yeah.
It was very ornate.
Okay.
Some might say pompous.
Pompous, okay.
And it was widely mocked at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people made fun of it.
So it didn't really work.
Not really.
Okay, so all this bluster, and yet Ticonderoga is still supposed to be this, like, super strong fort.
The Gibraltar of the North.
Yeah, the Gibraltar of the North.
Uh-huh.
What happened? What was the thing that made it fall?
The thing that did it.
Apart from, you know, being outnumbered.
Right.
Lack of information.
Commander.
The real turning point was Sugarloaf.
Sugarloaf.
Uh-huh.
What's Sugarloaf?
It's this big hill.
Okay.
Now it's called Mount Defiance.
Mount Defiance. Okay.
And it overlooks Ticonderoga and Mount Independence.
So it's like higher up than both of them?
Yeah. Perfect spot for artillery. Oh, no.
Yeah.
So if you get cannons up on Sugarloaf...
You can rain down 5...
You can just shell the fort.
On both of them.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So had anybody thought of this before?
Actually, yeah. Years earlier, when General Gates was in command.
All right.
This guy named John Trumbull.
John Trumbull, okay.
He pointed out how vulnerable they'd be if somebody got cannons up on Sugarloaf.
So he saw it.
He saw it.
But nobody listened.
Well, they kind of dismissed it.
Yeah.
So what did the Americans think about Sugarloaf? They thought it was impossible.
Impossible to do what?
To get cannons up there?
Oh, they thought you couldn't get cannons up there.
Yeah, too steep, too difficult.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
What's the thing?
Trumbull had actually climbed it.
Oh, no.
Along with Anthony Waynes.
Oh, wow.
And a then injured Benedict Arnold.
So they knew.
They knew you could get up there.
Wow.
It was tough, but you could do it.
So they just like convinced themselves it was impossible.
Yeah. They kind of just ignored it.
Wow.
Maybe wishful thinking, maybe just bad communication.
Well, they just underestimated the British.
Could be underestimating British ingenuity.
Yeah.
So they're focused on the main fort,
Right.
Ticonderoga itself.
So Gibraltar of the North.
Yeah.
And they totally forget about this big hill.
Yeah, they miss the big picture.
Overlooking everything.
Right.
So the British see Sugarloaf, and what do?
Well, they realize this is our chance.
Yeah.
This is how we take Ticonderoga.
So they got to get cannons up there.
Cannons up there.
How do they do
So
this?
after the Americans withdraw from Mount Hope.
Mount Hope, okay.
On July 2nd.
Okay.
The British engineers, they realize we can get to Sugarloaf now. Okay. So starting that day, they start
hauling cannons,
clearing the summit,
wow.
building gun emplacements.
And they're doing this secretly?
As quietly as they can.
Wow.
It takes some days
to get these cannons up this hill.
Big cannons up a steep slope. It's a huge effort.
So Burgoyne's plan is to get the cannons up there. Before the Hessians get there.
So they can trap the Americans.
So the Americans are celebrating July 4th.
Yeah. Kind of a subdued celebration.
Yeah, I guess so.
They know things aren't great.
Right.
But they're trying to have a good time.
Yeah.
But that night, the British accidentally give themselves away.
Oh.
Some of the indigenous scouts, they light fires on Sugarloaf.
Oh, no.
And the Americans see it.
And they realize.
Oh, no, they're up there.
They're up there with cannons.
We're doomed.
Yeah, that's got to be like a terrible feeling. Like your worst fears are confirmed. So July 5th.
Next morning.
St. Clair calls a war council.
Emergency meeting?
Yeah.
They got to figure out what to do.
And they know.
They know they're in trouble.
They can't stay.
They can't stay.
Yeah, the British are just going to bombard them.
Right.
So they decide to retreat, but they don't want to let the British know.
Right.
So they wait till nightfall.
Yep. Under cover of darkness.
Yeah.
To sneak away.
And St. Clair knows that this is not going to look good.
No.
He knows he's going to get blamed for this.
He basically says, if I stay and fight, we're all going to die.
Right.
And I'll be a hero.
Yeah. I'll save my reputation.
But if we retreat and save the army, I'm going to be seen as a coward.
Yeah.
And I'll lose my job.
So he's like stuck between a rock and a hard place.
No-win situation.
Yeah.
So under cover of darkness, they start to evacuate.
Okay. How do you evacuate a fort with 3,000 men?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
They loaded everything they could onto boats.
Okay.
Armaments, supplies, sick and wounded, camp followers.
All the stuff, yeah.
And they sent them north.
Up Lake Champlain.
Towards Skenesborough. But they didn't have enough boats for everything, so they had to leave some stuff behind. The biggest cannons, some of the Sycamore supplies, and the rest of the army, they marched overland.
Okay, where'd they go?
Down this rough road towards Hubbardston.
Hubbardston.
Okay, but there's one embarrassing detail.
Oh, what's that?
They left some men behind.
At the fort?
At the pontoon bridge.
The bridge, okay.
Don't burn it.
So the British couldn't follow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when the British got there, the men were drunk.
No, they were supposed to burn the bridge.
Yeah, they were supposed to burn the bridge, and they were too drunk.
Yep.
That's not great.
Not a good look.
Not a good look.
So the next morning.
July 6th.
July 6th.
The British just walk in.
They stroll right in.
To Ticonderoga and Mount Independence.
Both of them.
Without a fight.
Pretty much.
Wow.
So Burgoyne's like, okay, we got to go after them.
So he sends General Simon Fraser. With some British troops.
Okay.
And he sends the Hessians.
Under who?
General Friedrich Adolf Riedesel. Down the Hubbardston Road.
To chase the Americans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Burgoyne himself. He takes some troops.
Okay.
Towards
so to cut them off?
Oh,
so they're trying to trap him?
Yeah, pincer movement.
Okay.
There was some skirmishing.
Before they retreated?
Yeah.
But no big battle?
No major engagement.
So the Americans are retreating, and they get into some more fights.
Right.
So there's the Battle of Hubbardston.
Yeah, July 7th.
The day after they leave Ticonderoga.
Yeah. The British catch up to them.
There's a battle.
Pretty nasty fight.
Yeah.
And then the guys who went up the lake, they have the Battle of Fort Anne.
The Battle of Fort Anne. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're fighting these rear guard actions.
Yeah, trying to slow the British down.
So that the main force can get away.
Exactly.
And they eventually meet up with Schuyler.
Yeah, down at Fort Edward.
Okay.
But they lose a lot of men.
And equipment supplies. So this is not a good thing for the Americans.
Not at all.
I mean, Ticonderoga was supposed to be the symbol.
The symbol of American strength, and it just falls without a fight.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was the reaction back in the colonies?
Not good.
Yeah, I imagine
people were shocked.
They're shocked.
Outraged.
Shocked.
I mean, this was supposed to be the Gibraltar of the North.
Yeah.
And it just disappears.
Yeah.
Congress was furious.
Yeah. Were there any, like, famous quotes?
Oh, yeah, John Adams.
John Adams.
He said, "I think we shall never be able to defend a post until we shoot a general."
Wow.
So he's basically saying somebody needs to be held accountable.
Yeah.
In Washington.
That was Washington.
Yeah, he was shocked.
Yeah.
He expressed his chagrin and surprise.
Chagrin and surprise.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
And people started accusing Schuyler and St. Clair.
Yeah, of being traitors.
Are traitors?
Yeah, they said they must have been bribed by the British to surrender the fort.
So what happened to them?
Well, Schuyler was relieved of command.
He got fired.
Yeah, fired.
Replaced by?
Horatio Gates.
Oh, so Gates is back.
Gates is back, and he'll go on to win at Saratoga.
Oh, that's right.
And St. Clair, he was removed from command, too.
Okay.
And he demanded a court-martial.
To clear his name.
To clear his name.
Yeah.
He wanted to prove he wasn't a traitor.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, the court-martial took place in 1778, and he was exonerated.
They found him not guilty.
Not guilty.
Okay. But his reputation was ruined.
Yeah. I mean, he never really recovered. He never got another major command.
And Schuyler.
Schuyler was also eventually cleared by a court-martial.
But his career was also hurt.
Yeah, he never really regained his political influence.
So it's like they were found innocent. But nobody really believed it.
Yeah. The damage is done.
So what about the British? I mean, they must have been thrilled.
Oh, yeah. King George III.
King George.
He was ecstatic. He burst in on Queen Charlotte to tell her the good news.
So they were happy.
Very happy.
But what about France and Spain?
They weren't so happy.
Oh, right, because they were
secretly supporting the Americans.
Yeah.
Giving them money and supplies.
And they saw this and thought,
this isn't good.
Yeah.
In fact, they actually tried to pressure France and Spain.
Who tried to pressure them?
The British.
Okay.
To close their ports to American ships.
Oh, wow.
But they refused.
Like, good for them.
Yeah.
So, in the long run, did the fall of Ticonderoga really change the course of the war?
Yeah.
It was a big propaganda victory for the British.
Definitely. Yeah. But strategically, it didn't really help them that much. Okay. Burgoyne's advance south was really slow. The terrain was terrible between Skenesborough and Fort Edward and Schuyler. He had his men chopping down trees, blocking roads.
To slow the British down.
Yeah, making it as hard as possible for them to move.
So this gave the Americans time.
Crucial time.
To regroup. And build up their...
Further south. And this all leads to... Saratoga, which is a huge American victory.
Yeah, the turning point of the war.
Yeah.
That convinces France to openly join the Americans.
After Saratoga, the British retreat from Ticonderoga. And what happens to the fort?
Wow.
And it's still standing, right?
Gates reported that the British burned it.
Oh, they burned it?
Yeah, both Ticonderoga and Mount Independence.
Wow, so they just torched it on their way out.
Yeah.
So this supposedly impregnable fort ends up getting burned down.
Ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for those who like historical fiction, this whole Ticonderoga thing is in Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series.
Yeah, An Echo in the Bone.
Echo in the Bone. Okay. Yeah. So it's a pretty famous event.
Yeah.
Even though there wasn't a big battle.
Right.
So let's sum up the fall of Fort Ticonderoga in 1777. Wasn't really a battle.
More of a strategic retreat.
A retreat, and it was caused by...
Well, Burgoyne's clever move was Sugarloaf.
Yeah, putting those cannons up there, and the Americans realizing that they were outnumbered.
Outgunned.
And in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So even though it had this reputation as being super strong... Impregnable. It was given up without a fight.
Pretty much.
And this shows us how important it is to hold the high ground.
Always.
Always.
High ground is key.
Yeah. And it also shows us the problems that the Continental Army had.
Right.
With being under-equipped. Undermanned throughout the war.
A constant problem.
Yeah.
They just never had enough of any.
Yeah. So here's something to think about.
All right.
Think about how much perception and reputation can affect military and political decisions.
Right.
The Americans thought that Ticonderoga was unbeatable, and that made them vulnerable.
Right. They didn't think they had to worry about it?